For example, like first of all, just so you know, like with your children, you said that they want to have ADHD. First of all, ADHD is a superpower. Okay.
Okay.
I don't look at it as a disability. Some people do.
All right.
Because let's just take, because sometimes we got to some things though we do have to reframe, right? Because all, even if you think about all disorders in general, quote, I'm gonna say disorders in quote, are needed for society, and I'm gonna tell you why. So
Bismillah. As always, we begin in the name of the one true creator, the Most High. This is your host, C.L. Edwards, for the Muslim Urban Muslim podcast. And this is going to be episode number 5. We got a guest this time. Now, I know you used to seeing, you used to seeing me talk and talking my little talk and whatnot, but I thought this is a excellent person to bring onto the podcast because of the knowledge that she happens to bring to the particular subject we're going to be talking about, which is mental health. And mental health is a big topic nowadays. You hear a lot about mental health. I remember, I'm old enough to remember back in the days, people, the idea of a black person going to a therapist was unheard of. That's something, we used to say that's what white people do, go to therapists. Black people don't go to no therapist. They ain't got no money for that. You better swallow it, wipe your tears and swallow it.
ain't nothing wrong with you.
Yeah, that's how we used to talk. I know these generational Z's, Zoomer kids. They probably like that sounds weird, but no, that's how people used to talk. But I'm glad that it's changing. We're human. Black people are humans. We're not, robots. We're not. We don't have some ability to take stress more than other people. I mean, even that's a racist trope in the medical field. I've read about that. I'm sure you know about it. How some doctors incorrectly believe that black people, black women in particular, can take more pain than other people. Have you heard of that? Oh, definitely. And so that's not true. That's not true. So Michelle, I want you to go ahead and introduce yourself to the audience. Tell them who you are. Tell them what you do and what you're all about.
So, my name is Michelle Davis. I have my master's degree in clinical psychology with a focus in trauma. So, I own my own practice right now. And so, as a licensed professional counselor, I treat a variety of disorders such as anxiety, depression, PTSD, dissociative disorders, personality disorders. So basically, what I do is I use a lot of different like cognitive behavioral therapy approaches to assist people to think about how their cognition and their behaviors continues to influence how their life is currently today. Whether that is how your childhood has impacted your adulthood, or how maybe a traumatic experience like domestic violence versus a car accident, how continues to impact your quality of life today. Um,
Okay.
so that's basically what I do in a nutshell.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if the people, I know you're on YouTube like I am,
Mhm.
you got some excellent videos. I've been checking out your videos.
Thank
I
you.
just saw the video you did with Shadid Mohammed. Um, that was a good one. That's a classic. So if people wanted to see your content, where can they find that at?
So they can go onto YouTube under everyone that's the number one favorite therapist. You just go onto my Facebook, Michelle Renee Davis, or you can go to my Instagram again. That's everyone the number one underscore favorite underscore therapist there also.
Okay. Okay. Good business. In fact, let me see if I can share your YouTube page so people can see it real quick. Hold on, hold on. Here we go. There you go. That's the sister's YouTube page. I encourage people to go check out her page and subscribe and watch some of her videos. And some of y'all can be real stingy with the likes. Y'all be watching videos, but you act like you don't want to like nothing. It don't cost you, but nobody's asking you for some money. You want? I got a link if you want to, donate some money. But it doesn't cost you to like a video. If you sit down and watch a video for more than 2 minutes, I mean, you owe the person a like at that point. That's just the way I think. Um, so let's really get into this topic. We know that in the Black community in general, and in the Black Muslim community, um, we have some issues. We have some challenges with our marriages, with our homes,
Mhm.
with our families. A lot of us are, some of us are reverts to the deen. Some of us may be first or second generation. You got some third and fourth generation Muslims out here also. But some of us may have not, we didn't grow up in the deen, and we may be bringing some baggage into our lives. And when we get married, just because you take the shahada, I've said this on my program and other programs also, just because you take the shahada, that's your step into salvation, alhamdulillah. But that doesn't, it's not like a magic potion. It's not like the Christian concept of catching the Holy Ghost, where you turn into get born again, and you turn into a whole different person, and all your past history and all your past traumas and everything you've been through just vanish, and you're a new person, and you can just go out here and hook up with another person, get married, and everything's supposed to be la di da, a-okay. It doesn't necessarily work out like that. um, Let me ask you this. How does as adults, how does our relationship problems and our marriage problems, whether it's fighting, domestic disputes, divorce, remarriage, all these different things, how does that affect children?
So when you have a home and it's mom, dad, child, and they separate, that automatically causes a child distress. Okay. Because the child, so we have this thing called mirroring neurons, right? And mirror neurons tell us how to be and how to behave. Also, it when you have a mother and father in a home, it teaches children about what relationship be like, how relationships should, like the role of a man and a woman inside of a household. So when you take that and strip it apart, that's also telling a child how you should be as in a divorcee, right? So if you have a child and y'all get a divorce and then they stay with mom. So whether it's a daughter or a son, the daughter feels like if we get a divorce, the kids have to stay with me because that's what was modeled to me. And then if you have a son, the son is saying basically, hey, if you get a divorce, they stay with my ex-wife. There's no,
Mm,
uh, that's what you learn, right? Even though it may be like, oh, people think like, oh, but you're an adult now, then you should do something different, right?
okay.
Okay. That always sounds great, right? And I love when people say, if you know better, you should do better. That's not a thing. Like we really, it's a gaslighting technique to tell people you should do better without the tools, right? I can know that I should be a better mother, but I may not know how to be a better mother.
Mm,
I may know that I have to be a better husband, but I don't know how because I was never taught. And so we come into these ideas that's not real. So just to give you an example, I had a gentleman who he was saying like his son said he didn't want to see him anymore and didn't, and he was like, I felt disgusted that I work with children and they all love me. They all come to me and are able to talk to me when they can't talk to their parents, but I can't be there for my son. So I asked him, well, who taught you how to be there for those kids at your job? You get training, right? They train you
mm,
how to work in these environments. Who trained you how to be a father? He was like, well, nobody, because my dad wasn't there.
mm.
So you may think like a transferable skill, like, well, why don't you just transfer the skill? Sometimes it may not even dawn onto people that the way I behave with them, it should be the same way I do with my own kids.
Okay, okay.
So when you are thinking about, and granted, I'm not advocating for people to stay in a marriage where it's like abusive, toxic, and because you're also teaching your kids that also. But but I think especially as a woman, and I always speak to women because I am a woman. Sometimes we want to get rid of men when some things are not that deep.
Mm.
It don't be that deep. Some things it just be like, you should probably just mind your business. Like,
So,
why are you worrying about that?
so you're talking about the irreconcilable differences divorce.
Yes, you know, I had a sister say, like, she's in polygyny, and she was like, my husband told me he was gonna be out of town. She said, and then one day he drove past me. She was like, so I knew he was at the other White House. I said, why you care? She like, well, because he lied. I said, that's between him and his Lord. That's between him and his Lord. Why are you worried about it?
Mm.
And people think that I'm trying to be harsh, but it's not that I'm trying to be harsh. It's just that sometimes we get rid of good people, good men, in the interest of something very small, minute that doesn't even matter.
Mm. Mm. That's deep. That's deep. And yeah, that's deep on a multiple levels from me thinking about what you're saying and my own personal experiences. Um, let me go into this to this direction. What are the challenges to children when you have a divorce, whether it was for a good reason,
Mhm.
whether it was for a bad reason, whatever the reason was, it's over with now, and everybody done moved on with themselves. What happens to the child? What can happen to the child when you get into the blended family, step family form of the family? Expand on
So,
that.
so let me even back up before they even get remarried, right?
Okay.
Um, because now you left it, because in general, most of the time, the children get left with the mother. I highly do not recommend that, and I'm not saying
Hmm.
that. I'm so glad.
Uh-oh.
I'm so glad that you're gonna edit this because God, I'm in the podcast, Mom.
Oh no, I'm not taking this part out.
I'm in the podcast.
I'm not taking this part out. I'm not taking this part out.
So it's actually not a great idea.
Mm.
Children go
Tell us why.
with their fathers. So I'm gonna
Okay.
tell you why. Number one, and this is not to say that emotions are not important, because they are very, very important. However, in general, a lot of times women will create an unnatural and unhealthy bond that we call emotional incest with their children. Men are less likely to do that, except for traumatized men who was raised by their mother. But usually we create a bond called emotional incest. So what we do is, you ever meet a woman and you be
Hold,
like,
hold, hold, hold. Before you go further, I just want people to hear that terminology. Emotional incest.
yes.
Okay.
So that's basically where you ever meet a woman and you be like, is your son your husband? That's
Ah,
emotional
okay.
incest, right?
So you're talking about women who do stuff like have they son sleeping in the bed with them, even when they over 10 years old, 11, 12 years old, sleeping in the bed with mama, getting in the shower with mama.
Yes,
uh,
and I've seen that too. But I'm more so talking about where they have inappropriate conversations with their kids, like, your
hmm
dad ain't this, and like their son is their friend, and you should protect me from him. Like, no, he should not. He's a child. He's 9. He's 10 years old, and they have these conversations about the other parent to the child, even if he is no good, even if he is. It creates a psychological damage in their mind, because children ultimately internalize things. So even though
Okay.
you may be saying that your dad ain't no good, and like, let's say he's taking care of another family, the child's going to feel like, oh, it must be me then. So
Mm.
what you do is, when they first developing, you actually should make excuses, like, hey, maybe he's busy, he got a lot on his plate, maybe he'll come around, blah 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 blah. And then once they child start to get older and they get to a certain level, then it's, hey, well, no one's perfect, people need forgiveness, people need grace, you know. And then you that's when you go into, they're an adult, and they get to make the choice of how they want to be. And it's not taken away from their feelings, it's because you still pour into them like, I know you're angry, I know you're upset, I know that this makes you sad, and you validate those, but you do not contribute to it.
Mm, mm. Let me break off a true story for you.
Mm,
My mother told me, I don't remember it, but my parents got divorced when I was 5.
mm,
And my mom said that one day I came into her room crying and I said, Mommy, I won't be a bad boy anymore. Um, I'm sorry I caused y'all to get divorced.
mm,
You know, and I've heard about that in other situations, like you just said about a lot of times it is from the woman's part. I'm not saying the man can't do it, but a lot of times it is from the woman's part
mm,
where they get the child involved in things that is just way too much for the child to even handle. I know of a brother who tried to get custody of his child, and the mother went back to the child and said, "Your father is trying to take you away from me,"
mhm,
and tried to get information about the father from the child. And then didn't stop there. Then she claimed that the child said that they were afraid of their father and the father was beating their child, and it was a
mhm.
complete total lie. What made somebody do something like that?
So if you ever, and this is why it's so important to find out people's histories and what they've been through, not necessarily to use that against them, but in general, traumas get passed on. And I'm quite sure she saw her mother do it, and her mother
Mm,
saw her mother do it, where
mm,
they ostracize the other parent, or sometimes women again in attempt of not feeling abandoned, right? They want to hold on to the child like the child is an extension of them. Like, oh, because some people they'll have children so they can like, I want somebody to love me. That's not the child's responsibility.
mm.
So they don't want to feel abandoned by a child when in reality that's not what's happening.
You know what I've seen also? I've seen this a few times where if it's a daughter, a girl child, the mother will continue having children, and they'll make the daughter take care of the younger kids.
Absolutely. And so that's the other side of emotional incest when it comes to girls, right? So especially
Mm,
the oldest girl, they're usually put into like a friendship type relationship with the mother where it's like, don't get a man, men ain't crap, men this, men that. And then they wind up being home and be the ones that's taking care of their mother in old age because they got stuck basically.
mm. So the mother like so and what it whether it's the boy or the girl, what it sounds like is the mother has some flaws and some needs that she's
Mhm.
trying to get out of the child, and she's willing to sabotage the child
Yeah.
to get what she believes she needs.
Yep. So the daughter become hyper independent, which is a trauma response, and then and the son is always looking for his next mother.
Mm, you dropping bombs. You dropping bombs. I mean, man, that's you done summed up the whole black community in a few breaths.
And that's
We
how
got a lot of son husbands running around here, and we got a lot of men that want mommy, and we got a lot of sisters that want to be people's parent.
hmm yeah. And it's unnatural, and we need to really start taking accountability for it because we always like to say like, oh, I did the best that I can. And granted, I'm not taking it away from no mother that you didn't do the best that you can do. It doesn't mean that it still was right just because you did your
Okay.
best,
Hmm.
right? And we just have to own it because if you look at the prison system or any kind of behaviors, the rate of children dropping down usually comes from a single parent mother home, going to jail, single parent mother home. These statistics is overwhelming. But however, what they don't talk about is children who are raised in a single parent father home has the same statistical output of being raised in a two-family home.
Ooh, ooh. Now, what you gonna say to some sisters? Okay, so let's say some sisters are watching this right now,
hmm
and they're feeling a little triggered right now. They're feeling a little triggered,
hmm
and they feeling like you on the, oh, she on the man side. She one of them. She on the man side. She don't understand. She don't understand. What do you say to those sisters, and to their response, who are having that negative response?
So I'm not on the man's side. I'm on us getting better as women. Period. And the thing about it is, what I don't do, if you ever watch a lot of my podcasts in general, usually I don't really speak to a lot of men. I might say something in general, but I don't really speak to men. And the reason being is not because I don't think men need help. Oh yes, like if I'm saying that a lot of problems are coming from being raised by single mothers. Let's think about what the Quran says, that men are protectors and maintainer of women, right? So when that is removed, if that protection and providing is removed from us, right, because they are the Qawam of the home, somewhere they failed us, and then we're
Mm,
failing our next generations.
okay.
We have to have protection from the outside world to be able to function appropriately inside the homes. And that's not to say that we need somebody to control us like we put Pinocchio. No,
Okay.
it's not that. It's that, think about whenever you feel safe, you can be more productive. But if you're not safe, you're always hyper vigilant about how to protect yourself all the time.
Survival mode.
You're always in survival mode. So it's not that I'm trying to say, hey, let me go on this warpath of attacking women. Is not that's not the case. And plus I also wrote a little memoir. It's called To All the Men I Loved Before, and it just talks about all the trauma that I've been through and that how I've been working through and continuously work through it. So as women, right, I know how it is to be a woman, right? And so, like, to give you an idea of what I mean by certain things is that I always tell people, like, as a therapist, right,
Hmm.
you know how you want me to make you feel as me being your therapist. If people always know to be like, yes, I want to feel good, I want to feel happy, I want to feel like I can accomplish anything. But do you know what it takes to be a therapist so that I can make you feel that way?
Mm.
No. That's the same thing with men, that stuff that men go through. I may objectively see concerns and issues, but I don't know what it's like to be a man and be the Kawam of a household. I don't know what it's like to be a man and say that I gotta leave this family and I got $2 and two nickels to rub in my fingers and I gotta make it happen. I don't know what that's like. Now, granted, as a woman, I know what it's like. I might bat my eyes, smile, have my little dimple show, and I might get some, but that's not the realistic idea for men. I don't know what that's like, so I can't talk to a man about what life is like for you when I don't live your life. I live my life as a black
100%.
woman.
Okay. Okay. So now I want to do a circle
Mhm.
back to the question I answered about the blended family and the step daddy family and how that affects children. And then I'm going to hit you up with a follow up question. I'm not going to hit you with the follow up question yet. Let's go right there then. Let's go
Okay,
right there.
so blended families can be good and bad.
Okay.
I recommend, if you can, obviously this is not going to be the case in majority of situations because we have a lot of dysfunction and toxicity that's going in our community. But if
Okay.
the children can go with their fathers and have blended families, that's better.
Mm.
Women are more likely to follow the lead of their husband. So if, like, say I'm married, I mean, say I said I'm not married. Say if I get married to a man, um, he may want to discipline my children in a way that I don't like, right?
Okay.
And so let's
Mm.
say, because that's always a reality. So now we having conflict in our marriage over kids that you're trying to provide and protect for, and they're not yours, and it's this conflict. So that's why it would be better if the children go, because then again it's going to be that whole idea of, now it's I got to protect my kids, or now we teaming up as this other family against you, and it just creates a lot of things inside the household, where if you go with your a man, if the children go with a man and he gets remarried, in general women fall in line with the disciplinary style of the man.
Mm. Another thing I notice is that when it's a blended family and the man comes into the woman's abode or in situation, And
Never
as
do that.
children,
Never do that.
not don't do. Yeah, I know. Don't do that. It's a
Never
mistake.
ever move in with a
Hmm.
woman.
Okay.
Never. Just never. I don't just never. Like if she not
Mm.
Khadijah radiallahu anhu, don't do it. Don't do it. It's not worth it. Um because even if you go and purchase something together, like where y'all get married and y'all purchase something together, um,
Hmm.
but do not do it because it's always my home, and then you're gonna get kicked out.
Well, I was good. Those are all excellent points, and yeah, I've yet to see that situation work out yet. But one of the things I notice is that the children will play their mama against the stepdaddy.
Absolutely.
Because the mama, she's got emotion. She's emotional, and they can play that emotion, like you said. The stepdaddy wants to put some discipline in the situation, wants to get some structure and some order, but they don't want that, obviously, because they used to being with mama all the time. Who's this new dude coming in trying to put some structure and discipline into the household? So they make emotional appeals to mama against the stepdaddy.
Hmm. Where
You
I
know.
don't recommend that.
Okay.
Um, if you just and this is what I say to women all the time is if you marry a man and as long as it does not go against the Quran and Sunnah of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam,
So.
you need to do as he says.
Mm,
If you don't like it, you shouldn't have married him.
mm, okay. Okay.
Period.
Now,
I think
go
that
ahead.
I think like with women, you know, what we'll do is we'll marry somebody that we know is no good.
Hmm.
Then we want to complain about them, and then we get a divorce, and then we want to blame them. It takes two people to tangle,
It certainly does.
and a lot of time when your trauma mind already knew that he had stuff going on with them,
Okay.
and we would choose to engage in that over and over and over again. So like I had a woman, it wasn't a sister, but she just a regular woman, and
Hmm.
she was talking about how she and see and that's so I was having a therapy session with a woman, and she was talking about how she met this guy who she really likes. He's really nice. They have fun together. They go out and just really have a ball. She said,
Hmm.
but I don't really like him like that. I don't see him intimately. I said, but wasn't you just pawning over the guy that was in and out of jail that had a gambling problem that was sleeping with all the
Mm.
women? And she's like, I know, right?
See,
Because
she
when
she
we
wa-
confuse,
she wanted that thug passion.
no, we confuse toxicity as love
Okay.
because it's exciting. Like, oh my God, I'm on edge again. Like, no, that's not love. You just on edge.
Mm. That kind of reminds me. I don't know if you heard about the Creed 3, the movie just came out. In the
Yes.
star of Creed 3, it was an incident, him on the red carpet or something like that. And it was the girl who went to interview him. They knew each other from high school, and he happened to mention like, "Oh, you the one that used to call me corny." Used to call me corny, and the whole thing erupted on the internet about black women calling certain men corny.
Hmm.
They don't date these men that they think of as being lame or corny,
Hmm.
but they may go for the guy like you just more quote unquote exciting type guy.
Hmm.
But is that what their kids need?
No, they kids do not need no toxic individual. And when I
Mm,
mean by toxic, sometimes we think of it as it always got to be explosive or violent. It could be
hmm.
emotionally and mentally violent.
Okay.
And so like even like people who may experience depression, which I'm not demonizing depression, but when people
Hmm.
experience like depression, like I was married to a guy who had like extreme depression, and so one of his coping mechanisms is he will withdraw, which
Okay.
That was his thing. That's what he did. However, it's abusive towards your family because now you're not giving them the love, care, and attention that they need.
Hmm.
That's somebody
Hmm.
they need to get themselves better and they need to get themselves well before they get into relationships.
Okay, I see that. That now that goes into my follow up question. Now, when people get into these step parenting, blended family situations, and let's say it's even as you have been talking about, where the woman gets involved with a man who may be mentally unstable, um, who isn't all there to function as a as a complete husband or a complete father or slash stepfather. What are some of the negative things that can happen to a child when they go into a bad step family situation?
So I I do this thing called schema. So if anybody want to look up like schema work, right?
Hmm.
So if you have somebody that gets into a bad situation, right? I mean, we all gonna have some kind of like things that messes us up as we get older. Like it's because we just human beings. That's just
Hmm.
nobody's like we just gotta get out of that mind frame. However, we had this thing called schema. So like some I do schema work and I'll have somebody fill out a questionnaire. And let's just say like for example, one of them is schizoid avoidant, right? Some people because of traumatic experiences and like either your nuclear family or blended families where you want relationships but you avoid them.
Okay.
That's that person that you'll be like, you'll see them like they this relationship, that relationship, this relationship, that relationship. Like, wait, what's going on? Like, how did you get into all these relationships? And it's because as soon as it becomes tough, they abandon ship. Like, I'm gonna abandon you before you abandon me.
Mm.
Then you
Okay.
have people that may have paranoid ideas about what the person is always doing. Like, they always suspicious of the other person. Um,
Okay.
then you have people who may be like histrionic. So histrionic is more like I gotta the Marilyn Monroes of the world, right? The
Okay.
Marilyn Monroes or the Cardi B's, where you gotta be so extravagant because being beautiful and entertaining for men is what makes you valuable,
Mm.
right? People don't even realize like some of these things that we're doing are coping strategies to deal with negative feelings that we are having about ourselves. And people really need to focus on children's mental health because these children become adults. See, what
Certainly.
we do is we get reactive and we're like, what's wrong with him? You're an adult, you're this, you're that. But you are, what's the word I'm looking for? But you neglect that they this stuff happened when they was children. It
They
didn't
were
just
so they were socialized into that, into that outcome. It didn't
ex-
just happen overnight.
no. So like we're all born with a temperament, right? So
Okay.
it may be like I might be more excitable or I might be more reactive just by nature. So then when things happen that continues to keep developing that way of being, it turns into adulthood. So like for example, like first of all, just so you know, like with your children, you said they one had ADHD. First of all, ADHD is a superpower. Okay.
Okay.
I don't look at it as a disability. Some people do.
All right.
Because let's just take because sometimes we gotta some things though we do have to reframe, right? Because all even if you think about all disorders in general, quote, I'm gonna say disorders in quote, are needed for society. And I'm gonna tell you why. So for
Okay.
example, people make the assumption that if you're a sociopath, if you're a psychopath, that means you want to kill people. That's not what that means. Being a psychopath means you have less empathy than the average population. If you have less empathy, that means you can go and be a surgeon because
Mm.
the feeling of like throwing up, getting nervous is not there. You're just
Okay.
going to cut them open and you're going to do your job.
I never thought of it like that. I
Right.
never thought of it like that.
So let's just say you got ADHD.
Uh huh.
Now, if I'm out here on the floor, laying here bleeding, I don't want somebody to stop and say, what's going on with this person? It looks like they out here bleeding. Someone with ADHD is going to assess it in 2 seconds. They're going to know what they need to do in like 5 seconds. And then they're going to be working because they just jump into action because they're more impulsive.
Mm.
They're going to jump into action. So, yes, I want my paramedic to have ADHD because if I'm dying, I want him to jump into action with the knowledge that he learned to be able to work on me.
Okay.
But see,
Okay.
what happened was industrial civilization said, no, 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 no. You can't have none of this because we need you to be focused robot workers
And the school system.
in a school system. Yes. Well, so the school system is basically built up so that you can have robot workers.
Yes. Yes. Ford, Carnegie, all those billionaires, they put together the public school system as we know it, and they were it was set up to create workers
Mhm.
for Ford, you know, and others.
Now let's
And
say,
it- and if the kid don't fit in into their process, then the kid, you know, gets into trouble. They get labeled. They tend to get suspended. Like my son, I said ADHD, he's ADHD. You
mhm.
know, there was a time at the end of middle school, he got suspended 3 times in 1 year.
Oh, so I know.
Yeah, and I had a meeting with the teachers and the counselors, and Matt's wife was there, and I had to kind of check the school people at the school because this one lady, and you know, she was a white lady. Not that that matters, but I'm just saying she was a white lady, and she's describing seeing my son. He had somebody by the collar, and he was lifting them up, putting them against the wall, cussing at them. And she told him to stop, and he turned around at her and balled up his fist. And my son looks like J.J. Evans. He is skinny as a stick. He can't lift nobody up off the ground. I was like, lady, listen. Why are you saying all that? You getting ridiculous. You talking about my son's lifting somebody off the ground and all this other. You're trying to demonize him. I don't hear y'all trying to say anything about helping or assisting him. All I hear is you trying to demonize him and put him out to
Mhm.
school.
Yeah. And let's even like with the other child that you said that you had that has ODD, right? Oppositional defiant disorder. And I'm not saying that it's not a
It's
thing.
something else,
Some
boy.
people, no, I'm not saying it's, some things are not that. But think about any kind of revolution. Don't you think that they probably had ODD?
Mm,
It depends on which side of the fence you on.
okay.
And sometimes it's learning to cartel those behaviors to more productive ways of being, right?
Mm-hmm.
So, I had a diagnosis of that when I was a kid that I had ODD. They actually wanted to diagnose me with narcissistic personality disorder, which they should not. Yes, they tried to do that as a kid because I was in DHS. They said that I knew how to work the system or something like that. And I'm
uh,
like, I'm 14 and you said y'all got I'm in DHS. DHS has money, so why wouldn't I try to get money from DHS? Y'all or my parents, like, duh. But they said that I had ODD, which I think is interesting because one of the things that I do that burns me up, even as an adult, that it really gets under my skin are like bullies, right?
okay.
So I'm that person that be like, why are you talking to them? Like I would say that, like, why are you talking to them? Like, why are you doing that? Why? And if that labels me as oppositional, I'll take that.
Okay.
I'll take this because again, some things, some ways that people label you are based on what side of the fence that they decide that they want to be on.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Now, let me add to that. You know, I know you're aware of the fact that, you know, the performance of black children in these schools
Mm-hmm.
and the disciplinarian issues with black kids in these schools that, you know, black boys get suspended at a much higher rate than
Mm-hmm.
everybody. Even when they've done studies comparing the same exact behavior, the white child will get a pass,
Mm-hmm.
but the black boy, he gets suspended. So if you're a parent dealing with a child that has mental health or behavior issues, whether it's ADHD, depression, ODD, whatever it is, what is some advice that you can give to them?
To the teachers or to
To
parents?
the parent, to the parent dealing with the school system,
Mm.
or with a child that has behavior or mental health issues.
So one of the things that is always going to get a therapist that you trust. And the reason why I say get a therapist that you trust is because with um with a therapist, right, I can say things to them that you may not know exist, right? So, like for example, I went to a teen school. Well, I didn't go to, but it was via Zoom, and because the teacher called the child a narcissist,
Hmm.
and sometimes my mouth can be slick, but whatever. I said, "What credentials do you have?" Right? And it was like, "You don't have to answer that." I said, "You didn't have to answer it because it was more rhetorical." I said, "You do not have the credentials to label any child inside of their school as a narcissist.
Mm,
That's inappropriate. And I
it
don't want to
is.
hear something like that being done." And so, like the principal, or like she looks uncomfortable because I can say things that a parent may not understand or know.
Okay.
'Cause they know, but they're not going to tell you that.
Mm,
You know, versus even how we deal with children where you have a white teacher who
hmm
lives in the suburbs trying to teach inner city kids, and they can't relate to you. We know how important relatability is, but
Sure.
yet we don't do it. There should not be, I'm not saying no white, there should be no white teachers because everybody has something to give or offer.
Hmm.
But when it comes to learning and educating, we learn differently. And that's not a problem. That's why we bring so much pizzazz to the world
Hmm.
because we are different.
But it
And
seems like the school system doesn't have room for these differences.
of course
Now,
not. They want robots.
yeah. Now I know it may be different in different school systems, but you can make like a learning plan for a child. You
IEP.
know, yeah, you can make a learning plan for a child, which can help a lot. They can help it a lot. Um, that's what I ended up doing with my son when he got his diagnosis.
Mhm.
We did that plan for him, and my stepdaughter, she ended up having to go to like a it's not a it was alternative school. She went to an alternative school.
Mhm.
Um, that is the format is completely is totally different from public school.
Mhm.
It's more one-on-one learning, and there's a lot of computer-based learning, and there there's a lot of different. There's counseling. There's actually counseling at the school built into the group counseling, and she does one-on-one counseling. So, I mean, there are alternatives out here. You have to kind of explore and look for it,
Mhm.
and you have to speak up and ask for it also. You just can't, what I said earlier. When we was first beginning this program, I said, back in the days, we had this, black folks had this attitude that counseling, therapists and counseling, that was for white folks. We don't do all that,
Mhm.
you know. But if we care about the mental health of our children, we have to learn about these things. We have
Yeah.
to learn about the alternatives. We have to learn about what all this is about. We can't keep that old school mentality. Um,
No, I think that one old school mentality that we should really start getting back to is women teaching their kids in the home.
okay. Yeah.
Um, because even with the school systems, which I actually disagree with because I'm taking my kids out of school this year, is that
Okay.
they do not teach them to be successful. Again, they teach them to be slaves and robots. Yes. So with homeschooling, right, it allows you to see who your child is and develop them into their um what they're gifted at, right? So
Hmm.
like one of the things that like I wish I could go back in time was my son used to love to write. Like he used to walk around, get like books and then be like writing like whole books and then he'd give it up. And but if I would have been home to be able to teach him, it would have been we probably could have been all he could have been authoring his own books at 8, 9, and 10 years old, and kept developing them into like, who knows, like scholarly books or whatever it is that he decided that he wanted to do. But schools stripped that out of him. He doesn't even like to do it anymore. He like, nah, I'm okay. I don't want to do that, because they strip all the love of learning out of it. You
Yeah,
know,
that's true.
and they
That's
and they
true.
prime kids to be like, oh, um, maybe basketball or football. When in reality, the likelihood of you going pro is not even 1%.
Yeah.
Not even 1%. I don't care if you're the best on the playground. The
Yeah, that's what
likelihood.
they got for a lot of our black children. You can play some ball, you can play some football, you know, basketball. Hopefully, you can, you know, get, perform for the school, which makes the school look good. But they don't have nothing for you as far as you, you as a person, developing as a person, but developing as an individual, developing your talents, your skills.
Mhm.
None of that is there.
And the academia is not geared towards us either, right? They don't
Mhm.
teach us about Black history. They teach
True,
about the history that started with them.
true. We see that controversy right now. They teach us general stuff.
Yes.
MLK, slaves ran away up north, stuff like that. But you see right now, even when they're trying to, certain districts are trying to incorporate more information about uh, Black American history. You got some people going off, oh, that's critical race theory. And even them folks is talking about that's critical race theory. We don't want that. That's woke. That's that woke stuff.
Hmm.
So
Because if they want to tell you that, because they want to tell you that your history started at slavery.
mm,
So when you start someone's history off as slavery, everything seems like progress.
okay, true.
Instead of saying, "Hey, there's stones, I mean, tombs and stuff that was dug up that they already had dental work done, and there's
Mm,
no progress. This was already done. All these things that you think cesareans, this ain't no new phenomenon. We was already doing that.
mm,
A lot of things we have already invented,
been there, done that.
even with religions, just in general across the board.
Hmm.
All major religions, even the Wiccans and all everything came from us.
True.
But when you have it where it's like, no, this is when your history start, it traps you into this mindset and is thinking that every step that you made was progress, when in reality we backslid.
Mm, true. Facts. Facts. So if they give us a crumb, they give us a few crumbs. Look, how can you say there's racism? Look how much America has progressed, but that's not real. If you compare it to, we take the lens and spread it out beyond before 1619, you know, uh, this isn't progress at all, because what we had was better than what you got now. What we had is better than what you got now, and you destroyed that.
We
You
had
destroyed
gold.
that.
We were
So
using
you giving
gold.
us a few crumbs doesn't you giving us a few crumbs doesn't make up for what happened.
No, absolutely
So let me hit you. We're gonna wrap it up in a bit.
not.
Let me hit you off with is a child ever too young to start therapy? Um, let's go with
um
that question.
I don't think that a child is ever too young, but in general, one of the things that I ask parents is like, I always ask them, like, how do you want your child to be? Right. And they give me a list of all the things, like, I want my child to be this, I want my child to be that. And I always say, well, you have to be that, because they're going to only
Okay.
model what they see you doing. We love, I remember growing up, how black people always be like, do as I say, not as I do. That's not a thing.
Hmm.
We literally have neurons in our brains that mimic what your parents do. That's why, like, even, and we can't even help ourselves. Think about, like, when they're babies, you're like, hey, boo, 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 and you do all, because you want the child to mimic that back.
Yeah.
And it continues on all the way up until adulthood. That's why, if you ever notice that, like, after even babies who are born blind will mimic the facial expressions of their parents.
Wow.
That's how powerful these neurons are in our brains.
Mhm.
So just get the idea out of your mind that the child is going to do as you say and not as you do.
Not
And
gonna happen.
if you, it's not going to happen. And if you think that you are doing it and the child is still doing something else, you may think you're doing it, but not doing it.
Another thing, not everybody, but in our community, sometimes you will see is, they would take us to church,
Hmm.
even though they was Saturday, people was
Hmm.
smoking joints, drinking,
Hmm.
hollering, cussing, playing loud music,
Yeah.
committing zina, all types of stuff. And then they take you to church on Sunday, you know, and you were supposed to get a lesson out of Sunday school and seeing
Mhm.
white Jesus on the wall. Um, does some people think mental health isn't a big issue? They think religiosity can get rid of mental health issues, or just being religious will get rid of all these problems. Can you speak to that?
Absolutely. Is being religious going to get you rich?
Nope.
No. Because what always say to people is, if you ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for $1 million, are you just going to go sit on your bed?
Then not. It's not gonna happen, most
It's
likely.
not going to happen. Just like if you ask to have relief from an emotional distress, sitting on your bed is not going to get that.
Okay.
The answer to your dua may be a therapist. The answer to your dua may be somebody like, somebody who's wise, not knowledgeable, because knowledge and wisdom is not the same thing.
Hmm.
And someone who is wise for advice and constructive feedback.
Okay.
So other people may be answers to your du'as. You have to go out there and seek it.
Yeah. One of the motivations for that question is, we have enough multi-generational Black Muslims at this point where we do see a problem. I know you in Philly, and I know some people in Philly, but certain communities that have a lot of Muslims have an issue with their children engaging in high risk juvenile and criminal behavior,
Yeah.
and they come from Muslim homes. They
Hmm.
were raised by Muslims. Mama wearing the niqab, daddy wearing thobe every day.
Hmm.
It's upon the dawah, a salafiyah, the whole 9 yards. And yet they still out here on the streets. They still doing what they doing.
Hmm.
Um, for some people, they may not understand, and this is a play off the last question. How can that happen when the parents were they grew up in a religious home? They grew up in the masjid. How could something like that happen?
Some people may have narcissism and they hide behind religion.
Mm,
So we have this thing called religious abuse, where they'll use things in a religion that is true to abuse people.
okay.
And so, like, to give you an example, because this is one of brothers' favors, is when they get mad at their wife. Is That's why majority of the women that's going to
In
hellfire
the hellfire.
is because they were ungrateful, which is true.
Yeah.
But what we're talking about right here now, sir, is you cheating.
Yeah. So the old
Yeah.
deflections.
So, like, there are people who are religious, but they are still abusive, and they hide behind. And one of the things that is a good indication is like everybody loving you, but yet a lot of your family don't like you.
Okay.
It's usually a huge indication that they probably has either a full blown narcissist or has some narcissistic tendencies. Um,
Hmm.
because they abuse their family, but then they go out and then they're like, oh no, I'm this and I'm great. I'm an activist in the community, but yeah, I go home and I beat my women and my kids.
Hmm.
Or like I'll give you a good example. I actually have a brother on my caseload who, when he was 5 years old, he said this when tape players was out, and he said he had him and his cousin had recorded him talking about how he was going like engage in some sexual activities with like other kids, and they would play it for like when the friends came over for a game. And I think he said he was an imam or a teacher, somebody like influential in the community. But they had drinking and gambling and all that kind of stuff, and he would play that for them, and everybody would celebrate those uh those behaviors. And then one day he got caught at 5 where this little girl was giving him oral on a porch. And then he beat him extremely bad. So you told him that this was okay when it wasn't, and then you beat him for doing it, which create this duality of I should do something, but I can't do it because I don't know if it's right. So that's when you see those people who stuck. And it's like, why you can't never do nothing? Why can't you do this? Or why can't you do that? It's because of mixed messages. Like, this is great. Then I punish you for what I said was great.
Okay.
So
So that goes back. That goes back to they're going to mimic. The kids are going to mimic the parents and the people in the household.
Yeah. And so when you see people that are having behaviors, because always think about it, behavior is just a language. That's all it is. It's trying to say something. So I always say behaviors are just stories that a person couldn't say.
So I just realized my grip came in.
Yeah.
Bismillah.
Yeah. So when behaviors are just stories that couldn't be told. So when you see somebody, instead of saying what is wrong with you, let's start asking like, what happened to you? They made you think that way. What happened to you that made you behave that way? That will make things so much easier, inshallah.
Inshallah. So this has been excellent. This has been excellent. You talked about a lot of good topics. You bring a lot of good information. Again, your YouTube presence, everyone favorite therapist. You're on YouTube. You said you're on Facebook, right? Are you on, you on Instagram?
Yes, with everyone_favorite_therapist.
Okay. You're in all the top social media, and you actually have a website for your counseling. Let's not forget that. There's a link on your YouTube that takes you directly to your counseling website.
Yes.
Where it has contact information. If somebody like in the Philly area of in New Jersey, all that area, they wanted to get some counseling from you, they could actually contact you and set up an appointment, right?
Correct. They can go to WFMMH. So that's the first initial of my practice name, where faith meets mental health.com. It'll take you right to my website. You can book an appointment there, or you can always call 484-841-9558. And I will talk to you.
So are you going to come back? Can you come back?
Absolutely.
For another interview?
I absolutely can. And hopefully
we really just scratched the surface.
Absolutely. That's why when you asked me, I said, oh, can we break it into like more than one? Because really a lot, because everything influences each other. And people don't realize that. Like we think that sometimes our only sickness is spiritual. And so we'll keep going. It's like, no, it's spiritual, mental, emotional. It's all together as one. It's all together as one. You ever experience pain and mentally you're like, I just can't do it. Even though it might be just physical pain. Emotional pain actually shows in a body as physical pain.
That's true. You're one congruent being, spiritual, soul, spirit, body, mind, the whole thing. Like if you might have the mind and the spirit, you might have the spiritual drive. You want to do all types of good deeds. You want to go on Hajj, you want to go on Umrah, you want to volunteer and do something for the poor, maybe. You want to go to the masjid, you want to do all these things. But if your body is out of shape, if your body is jacked up, say your back is out of whack, you can't get up out of bed and do nothing.
Yeah.
You can make the intention, and Allah, He awards the intentions, the good intentions, but you can't do the actual action. Yeah. Maybe you won't even be able to fast Ramadan. You want to fast Ramadan, but you're sick,
Yeah.
so you can't even fast Ramadan. So yeah, I mean that's something I that is something I really push on my page. A total person health,
Yeah.
mental health. That's why I had you on the show. Spiritual health and physical health. I'm trying to get myself physically healthy at the moment. Um, and I've been doing that before Ramadan, and I'm using Ramadan to help me because that's going to help me spiritually to be able to do more good deeds. You
Mm-hmm.
know, inshallah, maybe Allah might instead, if I make my intention that I'm trying to get healthy for the sake of Allah.
Mm-hmm.
He gives me the opportunity to do more deeds so I can have more deeds on my scale, so I can, you know,
Inshallah. Ta'ala.
outweigh all that dumb stuff I used to do. So I can get something on the scale to outweigh all that stupid stuff I did be previously. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. And faith is really, really important. It really is. And as you were saying, like physical health, I always recommend like people, we need to get better with our diet. And what I mean by getting
Mm,
better with your diet, I'm not talking about like these whole health food where like, oh, let's do this. Like we need to go back to the way we supposed to eat from where we are from.
true.
Like where we from, they used a lot of stews. Why? Because there's a lot of herbs and supplements that they used to put into the food to make us well.
That actually was part of the philosophy of Dr. Sebi. I
Mm.
don't know if you heard of Dr. Sebi before.
Yes.
Yeah, he said that every different people group had their own type of food for their region. The
Hmm.
African has his own food for his region, and if you start eating the food of different people on a consistent basis, you're going to get sick. That was his philosophy.
Yes, because if I'm from a certain climate where sickle cell disease is prevalent, I need a certain kind of diet to combat that.
Mm,
That's more in tropical climates. I don't
true.
need to eat like how they eat down in the north.
Hmm.
Vitamin D supplements is very, very good for your mental health. It can present, especially when you're melanated. That's why we should be in places where it's more sunny because
Mm.
our body does not absorb vitamin D as well as our counterparts because of our melanation that protects us from, like sunburns and stuff.
Yeah. So I mean, there's definitely a link between the food you eat, and your mental health. Even the gut brain
Hmm.
communication. I've read things like the microbiome in the inside your gut sends signals to the brain.
Yes.
That's tripped me out.
Hmm.
That tripped me out. Like there's some organisms in my stomach that are communicating with my brain.
Hmm. But your whole body does, even down like because if you got to think about it, the cerebral spinal fluid it goes down to your spine, and your spine is connected to a lot of different regions. It's all like together.
Mm. And maybe some of y'all act crazy because of what y'all eating. Y'all
It's
eating, y'all eating them White Castles and that Kentucky Fried Chicken, all that dead meat. I wonder why you act the way you
meat.
act.
That's not even meat. That's who knows what that is. And then
Yeah, that's factory meat. That's some lab meat.
yeah, who knows what that is? There's a bunch of chemicals that's making people big, obese, which again also plays into your mental health.
Because I mean, yeah, if you carry fat, a lot of deposits of fat in your body, doesn't that mess with your hormones?
Yes.
And you store toxins inside that fat also.
Hmm.
Hmm.
So people need to
So
get
it's a
stand up,
deep game. It's a deep game.
and I'm going to leave everybody with this, and just so they can really understand how the these people in this Americas knows that this is true. That's why you ever think about why the Food and Drug Administration is in the same building?
Food and drug, food and drug together.
They understand that food is a drug.
But
That
that's an ancient saying that says, "Let your food be your medicine."
that's why it's in the same building because they understand the relationship.
Mm.
And we
So
be thinking that
we,
they don't understand this, and they're like, "Oh, what? I don't." You do, you do.
mm,
You understand if you give me food that's not real food, they're trying to make food and plastic food. You know it's not going to nourish my body and it's going to kill me.
Definitely. And then you throw on that, in a lot of our communities, you have food deserts.
Hmm.
You
Which
can't
makes
get
money.
fresh. You can't get fresh food. You can't get fresh fruit, vegetables. You can't even get fresh meat.
They actually posted a study about how food insecurity makes money,
I wouldn't doubt it. I wouldn't
because
doubt it.
what happens is, because people are so afraid of starvation, they go out and start working like a slave in company
Mm,
so that they can
mm.
buy these overpriced foods that they say is we don't have.
And you just made me think of something else. A lot of what we do, even though a lot of us in poor financial health, to make ourselves feel better, we'll go out and we'll work like a dog or do something we ain't supposed to do to get name brand clothing items or buy a car we can't afford on
Hmm.
finance or get a Gucci belt, but we want to invest in our food.
Nope. They say it's too much. Or
Yeah,
we
food
won't.
costs, organic, that costs too much.
Mhm.
I can get regular apple costs 90 cents. The organic apple costs $1.50. I'm not paying $1.50 for an apple, but you got a Gucci belt, you got a Louis Vuitton bag.
Mhm. I've had people come to me, and when I tell them that my prices, it was like, oh, I can't afford it. That's too much. With a whole full of weave on their head, it costs like $1,000. I
Mm,
said that weave costs more than my services.
that's but we gotta somehow, some way, we've got to have a revolution in our
Mhm.
ment in our and about values, because that's an issue of value system. What do
Absolutely.
you value?
Hmm.
That's what. So, we passed my grip already. I done said 3 times. We're gonna stop here. So We're gonna continue this on another show. I'm gonna work with you, maybe get you back next week or as soon as possible. We're
Hmm.
gonna continue this discussion in another show, and we're gonna get deeper than we got in this show. This is just a primer. This is
Yeah.
just a primer. All right.
Yep. Absolutely. I look forward to it.
Okay. Thank you guys for tuning in. Make sure that you like, make sure that you sub, hit the bell, and subscribe. Make sure you go to the sisters page and do the same exact thing. And you can reach out to her if you need some mental health assistance with yourself. And like I said, we're going to try to get the sister back on. We're going to continue this conversation, inshallah, if Almighty God wills. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. Peace be upon everyone who is watching.
Wa alaikum salam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.